A serene countryside area. A bizarre and shocking discovery. Human body parts spread across hundreds of kilometers. It's up to a determined detective to find out who the victim is and then hunt down the killer.
I knew that we were dealing with somebody else. He knew what he was doing.
CSIs face a formidable opponent.
This was not the work of an amateur.
Yes, I do.
A cold-hearted murderer who has cut up his victim with clinical precision.
Dismembering a body can be a very messy process.
Cut off the head, cut off the hands, and therefore you've got no dental evidence, you've got no fingerprint capability.
The question is, how do you catch a killer who knows how to beat forensic science? March 4th, 1988. A quiet rural area just outside Toronto, Canada. Homicide detective Larry Edgar of the Ontario Provincial Police has been summoned to a bizarre, grisly scene.
On my arrival, I find a lower leg. It's from the knee down with the foot attached. And it's laying there beside a garbage bag, and it appears that it's been frozen.
Edgar wonders if it's some kind of sick prank. Then he realizes it's no joke.
Hey, Edgar, I think I found something over here.
We conduct a search of the area. We find a second limb. The other leg cut at the knee with the foot attached, down the side of the embankment, beside a bag, you know, and it's very obvious that, you know, we've got a puzzle here in our hand.
Edgar orders the body parts photographed and sent to the morgue in Toronto. Dr. Hans Sepp conducted the autopsy. The murderer drained all the blood from the body, making identification impossible. The killer knows about forensic science. Sepp has never seen anything like it.
It's clear. There's no blood.
And I cannot quite explain how that was achieved or what happened. One could imagine and speculate that the drainage by gravity or drainage by pressure, applying pressure to body parts. And in other words, forcing the blood out.
Maybe Asian.
Sepp also points out that the cuts were made with clinical precision. Whoever did this has knowledge of human anatomy. He's smart and has done an amazing job covering his tracks. The killer's motive is a complete mystery. Kathy Reichs is a world-renowned forensic scientist.
Well, there are three main reasons that I've seen. One would be disposal, to make the body more easily handled and packaged. The second would be to minimize identification. Cut off the head, cut off the hands, and therefore you've got no dental evidence, you've got no fingerprint capability. The third would be when you see some sort of overkill situation, as it were, where the genitalia have been mutilated or the abdomen has been opened, something beyond simply getting rid of the body is brought into play, and that's usually the case with sexual sadism or something of that nature.
I knew we had a homicide on our hands. And so I decided from there, we've got to find out. It's like a puzzle now. We've got two pieces of a puzzle, the two lower limbs. So what we're going to have to do is try to identify where these parts belong to and who the person is.
With no leads, the homicide cop puts out a Canada-US bulletin. He doesn't even know if the victim is a man or a woman. It's like finding a needle in a haystack. At a dead end, Edgar turns to forensic experts for help. Brian Dalrymple was one of the OPP's top CSIs in 1988. He pulls a print from the foot, a science as exact as fingerprinting.
The friction-rich surface of the feet is every bit as individual as the surface of the hands are, and just as useful for identification. So we will be able to say that this footprint was made by one person to the exclusion of all others living or dead.
Dalrymple orders a cast made of the foot, creating a perfect mold. He determines that the foot is a woman's size 8 or a man's size 6. Now all they need is a missing person to fit the mold. Two weeks pass. Edgar's bulletin goes nowhere. He has no crime scene, no idea who the victim is, and no clues about the killer. The area where the body parts were found is surrounded by hundreds of kilometers of open country. He doesn't even know where to begin searching for clues. Then another gruesome discovery. It's a human thigh, found just 4 kilometers from where the first body parts were discovered.
I think there's something right there.
Fiber there?
Yes. Right.
Edgar doesn't know if he's got one victim or two. Still no hands or skull. No fingerprints, no dental records.
Somebody's been murdered, the body's been cut up, and the person or persons have decided to dispose of the body in a manner that's going to make it difficult to identify. So really, at that time, we had no idea where the crime scene could be.
Is Edgar facing a calculating killer who has dumped body parts just to taunt him? Or is this the killer's twisted method of disposal? March 1988. Police launch a massive search, looking for more human remains. They comb forests and fields in a grid-like pattern. The search area spans hundreds of square kilometers. The clock is ticking for Detective Larry Edgar to make an arrest. But he doesn't even know who the victim is, let alone the killer. Edgar has only small pieces of a large puzzle, a mystery that is becoming a personal obsession.
Looks like there's something right there.
Edgar pays Hans Sepp a visit at the morgue.
Well, Hans, we found these body parts in the same area as the foot we recovered.
The cuts or the separation of the limbs and the head and so on was in such a fashion that one thinks in terms of that the person has to have some knowledge of anatomy.
Sliced right through.
Sepp is convinced that the killer is a surgeon. Edgar seeks a second opinion from Dr. Ian Taylor, an anatomy professor at the University of Toronto.
I formed the opinion that this dissection had been done by somebody who knew exactly what they were doing. This was not the work of an amateur. It wasn't the work of somebody who was simply trying to separate the bits no matter how. This was somebody who was cutting with a rare degree of skill.
Dr. Sepp tells Edgar that there's only one chance at solving the mystery of the victim's identity.
Dr. Sepp advised me that if we ever could come up with an idea who the missing person was if we could see some of her clothing with blood on it, or anything with blood on it, he would be able to make a match on that.
Edgar turns for more help to another crime specialist. Ray Higaki was a biologist with the Center of Forensic Sciences in Toronto.
Once we ran the samples, it was quite fortunate from a forensic perspective because this individual was actually quite rare in terms of conventional serology. Or in other words, only one person in 1 million of the general population of Ontario would have that combination of blood groups.
It is Edgar's first breakthrough. Higaki also confirms that the victim was a woman and likely Asian. Edgar now knows he's got a Jane Doe, not a John. He alerts police nationwide that she's about 5'2" with a size 8 shoe. Gus Riddell was a cop in Asian Division of the OPP in 1988. He brings Edgar his next clue.
So when was the last time you saw your sister?
I think I saw her like 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago? Was she upset?
A Chinese woman with a missing sister and a story to tell.
Okay. What's her phone?
She actually came into the Metro Missing Persons Bureau. She said, my sister's missing, and they brought to my attention that this was a pretty good possibility for the limbs we had located down the Thousand Island Parkway.
And Gus advised me that 42 Division of Metro had a missing person investigation, in which there was a Chinese lady missing, and she had a size 8 foot.
Also here, short hair?
No, it's like to here.
Shorter length?
No, it's, yeah.
Her sister's name is Selena Shen. She is an educated, gifted violinist visiting Canada on a student visa. Selena also had a boyfriend. A tidy, polite businessman named Rui Wen Pan.
She was moving out.
No, she was moving out.
Well, she's been missing for 2 weeks now. You do know that, right?
Pan says he last saw Selena in February at a violin recital.
We haven't been in touch.
Music was her life, and Pan says he was a passionate supporter of her career. He tells police that he and Selena broke up in February, a month before the body parts were discovered. Pan gives them a travel case that belonged to Selena. She left it behind in the breakup. He tells them that she had another boyfriend that police should look into, a University of Toronto instructor named Robert Fisher.
I liked her very much. I found her very attractive, and I would have been happy to be her boyfriend. I said if she was looking for a place to stay, she could stay with me. And she said, no, it's okay, I already have something arranged. So after we talked for about an hour or so, she really poured out her heart to me.
Edgar now has two suspects, Pan and Fisher, but he hits a dead end. No one in Chinatown is willing to talk about Selena. Edgar has stumbled into a foreign world where cops and Chinese culture don't mix.
They mistrust the police. The policing in the Middle East and I would say Hong Kong, China, they're seen to be corrupt. So when they come here, it's a big mountain we have to climb up to let them see that we're not.
Edgar sends a forensic team to investigate Selena's apartment. The CSIs collect shoes and find underwear stained with menstrual blood. The items are taken to the lab for detailed analysis. Brian Dalrymple tackles the shoes, trying to match the print from the foot found in the countryside.
I removed the tops of all the shoes so that I would have a better look at the insole, the portion of the shoe that had contact with the foot. I examined all of these shoes by argon laser in the hopes that there might be some friction ridge detail. The very last pair of shoes I examined actually had some very faint ridge detail on the insole. When I compared the detail photographed on the insole of the shoes to the detail on the bottoms of the plaster cast, I was able to say with certainty that they came from the same foot.
At the same time, biologist Ray Higaki gets results from the blood on Selina's underwear.
The evidence seized from Selina Shen's apartment was pivotal in that it provided us with a comparison sample. And we were able to compare the blood grouping that we obtained from the body parts to the results from the bloodstain on that underwear, so that we could determine that with a 1 in 1 million frequency that the donor was the same type.
Forensics have proven that the Jane Doe victim is Selina Shen. But can the CSIs determine the identity of her killer?
Not really, she just came over to drop something.
Homicide detective Larry Edgar gathers the facts about Selina Shen. In the month before her murder, she moved apartments, got a new phone number, and a new bank account. Edgar believes she may have been afraid of Rui Wen Pan.
There was allegations that he wiretapped her phone, treated her like a slave, and she feared him very much.
Pan tells police they're on the wrong track. He says Selina was unfaithful to him, sexually involved with many men. Pan suspects one in particular. University instructor Robert Fisher. Police confirm that Fisher was one of the last people to see Selina alive.
She called me up and asked for my advice about how to apply for, how to register at the university. So I agreed to meet her, and I met her at a lounge at the School of Continuing Studies, and I talked to her for about an hour. We went across the street over to Bloor Street to the registrar's office, admission office, and we went in there and I showed her the line, and she got in the line. That's the last time I ever saw her.
Edgar sends cops to keep an eye on Fisher, and he continues watching Pan. With help from Asian specialists like Gus Riddell.
And these guys were the experts in Asian crime. I was just learning. We had 2 Asian officers who would answer any questions we had. I was so new when this happened that I didn't know the culture. I didn't know how to deal with people.
Riddell learns that Pan owns dollar stores in Chinatown, but he's no average shopkeeper.
Yeah, very weird. And at first, first impressions is the arrogance, and then you realize, boy, this guy really has hooks. He's got connections, and he seems to have money. He's not selling anything. He's buying all kinds of stuff. Where does the money come from?
Pan is a mystery man, but could he be the killer? Two months after the first body part was found, a man walking on the shores of Lake Ontario makes the most grisly discovery yet. Selina's torso, and it matches the killer's M.O.
On arrival, an examination of the torso is very obvious. It was clean cuts right along here, along the arms. The bones weren't nicked at all by whatever the cutting instrument was. So right away you could tell it was a skillful job that was done.
The torso is found over 100 kilometers from where the other body parts were discovered. The search area has widened into several thousand square kilometers of open country. The torso reveals that the killer hated his victim, what forensic profilers call a lust killing.
The nipples on the breast had been cut off. And right away, I thought about the psychological aspect of this. What are we dealing with here now? You know, has he kept these for a souvenir?
Famed pathologist Dr. Kathy Reichs says the lack of tool marks on the torso makes it a murder like no other she's ever seen.
Always there's some information in the bone. There's always some nick. there's something that's going to tell you, if not the type of tool, it's going to tell you the way in which the perpetrator went about it. Where are those marks? How are they distributed through the body? And that's useful information.
Edgar's next clue comes from Selina's travel case, which Pan gave to police. Inside, investigators find a collection of Pan's personal papers, including a U.S. residency application with a copy of his fingerprints attached. Also, some documents in Chinese, which Edgar has translated. It is Pan's report card from a medical school in China.
We learned that he had very high marks in blood transfusion, where in fact he worked at a place doing blood transfusions, scored very high in pathology and related fields. And so right away that kind of said, yes, here's somebody that possibly has the skills to do this type of dissection.
The quiet businessman has medical training. Edgar now has his prime suspect.
I haven't seen her for about a month.
Homicide detective Larry Edgar changes the focus of his investigation to Rui Wen Pan.
No, you're not. I'm not letting you go.
Well, our theory at this time is he's definitely a prime suspect. All the evidence points to him. It doesn't point to anyone else. We looked at Mr. Fisher. We looked at anybody else that could have. He's the only suspect. So we decided we're going to apply for a judicial authorization to intercept his private communications.
That's police talk for bugging Pan's house. Pan talks and talks in Mandarin and says nothing incriminating. Defense attorney John Rosen says police often develop tunnel vision on the most obvious suspect.
Who are they dealing with? Who is she connected to? What is her background? Oh, she has a recent breakup with a boyfriend. Well, from experience, we know that domestic relationships often lead to homicide. So he becomes a person of interest. And those persons who are on the side of the state come to believe in the guilt of the accused, more than beyond having grounds.
Then another grim clue. Fishermen find Selina's right arm.
Big one.
Edgar orders a massive underwater search for more body parts. Despite days of exhaustive diving, they find nothing. Selina's arm was found within a few kilometers of the torso. Edgar believes Pan may have dumped body parts on 2 separate occasions, 2 months apart. And he suspects Pan may have more body parts stored in a freezer somewhere. Edgar decides to set a trap for Pan.
We decide to strategize which is the best way to stimulate our suspect in doing something that will help us with this crime. Does he still have body parts that he's been keeping? Will he get rid of them now that he knows that we're onto him?
He issues a press release. It says that forensic investigators have proven that the victim is Selina Shen. If Pan drained Selina's blood and scattered her remains to throw police off his trail, Edgar's letting him know he's failed. Nothing to do but wait and see whether Pan takes the bait.
Secret germ, what? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Alright, what the hell? What's that then?
The next night, Pan takes a rambling drive with 2 friends visiting from China. An undercover cop follows them. The journey ends at a remote park on the edge of Lake Ontario.
He gets out and begins walking in the park, and he's followed by one of our surveillance officers. Now, this is around midnight, I believe, at that time. It's a windy night and fairly cold.
The undercover cop maintains his surveillance, posing as a homeless man. Pan takes no notice.
And when he walked out on the pier, he was carrying a bag in his hand. And when he walked back in off the pier, whatever was in the bag is now being deposited in the lake.
Pan disposes of the bag and is gone. The cop calls Edgar. It looks like his trap has worked. Edgar summons the Toronto Police Force's highly specialized dive team. They are equipped to recover underwater evidence in all seasons, day or night. Martin Hunt was on duty that night in 1988.
This dive was unique in the fact that, simple fact that it was conducted at night. It was spring, the water was still extremely cold, so we have to protect ourselves with dry suits. We had full face masks and neoprene gloves.
The undercover cop heard several splashes. Whatever Pan threw couldn't have gone far from shore.
Thinking maybe the skull or something's in the water.
We didn't know what he'd thrown in the water, and as I said, we assumed it was more body parts.
Hunt conducts a grid-like search along a 1,000 square meter area off the pier. If Edgar's right, Hunt could be in for a gruesome discovery.
So I went in half suspecting that I was looking for the victim's head, which, although I would have been happy to find it, was not a welcome prospect, simply because it was night and you don't know what condition the head would be in if that were to be the case, and you always wonder what your reaction will be when you first come upon it.
Then Hunt finds something no one expects.
When I found the first knife, it was clear the bottom was almost devoid of any kind of debris, and the knife was sitting cleanly on the surface of the rippled sand bottom. So it was clear that it had just been placed there or had just landed there. So I brought it to the surface, then brought it straight back to the pier without compromising any of the evidence on the knife, without touching the blade, etc., and handled it by the rough surface of the handle.
It looked like a scene out of a horror movie.
On the surface, okay.
This big black glove coming out of the lake with a knife. And of course, my first instinct is to grab it. And then it's, you know, like you catch yourself and you're thinking of everything you've ever studied, your laboratory aids to the investigator book that were all issued. And I can't think of what I'm supposed to do with a wet knife coming out of the lake.
Hunt finds 5 knives. Now Larry Edgar must determine if this set of cheap Chinese kitchen knives dismembered Selena Shen. Can his top CSIs prove it? The morning after divers retrieved Pan's knives from the lake, Detective Edgar orders them taken to the lab for analysis. He needs to get a fingerprint to prove that Pan threw the knives into the lake. Brian Dalrymple is the CSI assigned to the job.
It's well known that there are ingredients of fingerprint residue that are not soluble in water, and this would at least offer the possibility of recovering ridge detail from the knives, even though they had been in the lake. I fumed the knives with super glue and then sprayed them with the laser dye. When I examined them under argon laser, I was very excited to see areas of ridge detail on the blades. One area in particular on the tip of one of the knives had considerable detail in it.
Dalrymple gets to work trying to pull a print, a process that could take weeks. The undercover cop also found a box in the garbage can. Maybe they can get a print off that too. Larry Edgar feels like he's finally closing in on Rui Wen Pan. After throwing the knives, Pan talked all night with his friends from China. Edgar orders the tape translated as quickly as possible. Anatomist Ian Taylor tells Edgar he's certain these knives could have been used to dismember Selena.
They're not necessarily the instruments that I would use, but I would tend to use this kind of a knife, a scalpel. But it's very handy if you're wanting to make one big cut to use a blade which is much larger than this one. It's much easier to make a cut through all the superficial tissue down to the joints, say in the area of the shoulder joint or the hip joint, using a large blade.
But with not a single tool mark on Selena's dismembered body, the experts can't say for sure that the Chinese knives are the murder weapons. Finally, after 2 weeks, Dalrymple provides Edgar with the breakthrough he's needed.
After comparing the detail on the knife blade to the ridge detail on the fingerprint form, I was able to say with positive certainty that that impression was made by Mr. Pan.
Dalrymple cannot find any blood, but the fingerprint on the knife is Pan's. What the undercover cop couldn't see, forensic science can. Pan senses the police are closing in on him. Using a false identity, he takes his version of the events to the media.
A man who calls himself Ling Li is a former fiancé of Selena Lian Shen, a Scarborough violinist whose dismembered body was stuffed into several garbage bags and scattered over eastern Ontario. He claims his life has been threatened and his Gerrard Street business was broken into Tuesday night. Lee did not give details or a location. Police report the only break-in Tuesday on Gerrard East was at number 1044, a business owned by Rui Wen Pan.
Are you a suspect in this?
No.
You're sure of that?
No.
We were, again, very intrigued by a fella who's a suspect in a homicide, especially the homicide of his girlfriend, a loved one, and he's holding press conferences. Who is this guy? That kept coming back. That was a resounding thing. Where does he come from that he has this much brass to do this?
He professes his innocence and once again deflects responsibility to university instructor Robert Fisher.
I think it's a matter of face. You know, he comes from a culture in which your identity as a human being comes not from yourself, but from what other people think of you. He thought that Selena, or must have fantasized, that Selena was leaving him for me. In his mind, he thought that. The fact that he saw me as a professor at U of T made it worse, even more humiliating. So he thought, well, the whole Chinese community is going to know that this woman walked out on me and preferred a white man and somebody with, an education and a PhD and a professor and so on. And I think he found that just literally intolerable.
By now, Edgar's completely dropped Fisher as a suspect.
There's no motive, there was no opportunity, and the main thing, he's not skilled professionally to do dissects of a human anatomy.
He's certain Pan is his man, but he needs conclusive evidence. Finally, Edgar gets the translation of Pan's conversation from the night he threw the knives. In it, Pan describes a murder and how the murderer gets away with it.
This is a country ruled by law, and it gives great weight to evidence. What murder weapon did you use? Where are the witnesses, the material evidence? Are there or are there not your fingerprints in this knife? Blood traces were found on your floor. Her bloodstains appear on your wall. Only in such a case can you be convicted. It's very simple.
To Larry Edgar, Pan's strange, confusing statement is as good as a confession.
And what he did in that conversation, and we heard later, everybody agrees, what he did, he described the crime that night.
Questions answered.
On July 5th, 1988, Edgar arrives at Pan's home with a search warrant.
We're lovers for some time?
Yes, a couple of years.
Couple of years.
Forensic specialists Brian Dalrymple and Ray Higaki accompany Edgar, armed to scour his house for evidence. Ray Higaki takes apart Pan's tub, hoping to find evidence of blood in the drain.
I examined crevices around the floor, and particularly I took samples from the floor drain to determine whether or not any blood could have been washed down the floor drain. And we didn't find any evidence of blood in that location, or any other location.
Whoa.
Dalrymple finds a cleaver identical to the one they fished out of Lake Ontario. But no one believes Pan is so stupid as to leave the murder weapon lying around. At the police lab, Pan's car is scoured for blood, hair, and fiber. No results.
There's got to be some trace of blood. He couldn't have wiped the whole bloody thing clean.
Sorry.
If Pan killed Selena, he did a good job of beating the forensic scientists.
Well, anything is possible. It's certainly more difficult to remove traces of blood once it has been deposited, although it certainly is possible. It's a relatively simple matter, however, to prevent blood from being transferred to a surface like a van or any other vehicle. And that's really all a matter of packaging.
Here's your file, Larry.
Edgar considers the evidence he has so far. Proof of Pan's medical knowledge, Pan's jealousy of Robert Fisher, knives thrown by Pan into Lake Ontario, and a taped conversation about the crime. But there's still no blood, no transport vehicle, no crime scene. It all comes down to the wiretap.
This type of investigation had a lot of wiretap evidence, where conversation was intercepted. What made this one even more difficult was it was in the Chinese Mandarin dialect. It was difficult to hear, so it took a long time, and there's limited number of translators that would be qualified to do this type of job.
Edgar decides he's got enough evidence. He arrests Rui Wen Pan for the murder of Selena Shen. Defense attorney John Rosen says Edgar's delay before arresting Pan is common practice.
They collect their information. They wait a period of time, in this case a year, to see if they can get more information. They take whatever they have and they take their best shot. I know that doesn't sound, from the public's perspective, like a good way to do business in the crime business, but really that's what they did. And it's not the first time they've done it. It sometimes leads to wrongful convictions, and sometimes not.
Another piece of evidence surfaces just 2 weeks after Pan's arrest. Fishermen find a skull a few kilometers from where the first body parts were recovered. CSIs compare bone structure, facial width, and teeth. The experts are certain. The skull is Selena's. The forensic analysis reveals another chilling fact. Selena was not shot in the head or beaten with a blunt instrument. She may have been dismembered while still alive.
There was no evidence of damage to the skull. There was no fracture of the skull, and examining the brain, there was no evidence of bleeding around the brain or over the brain and so on. I cannot exclude the possibility that she was dismembered while alive. I cannot exclude that.
The question is, does Larry Edgar have enough evidence to prove that Pan committed this grisly murder? In 1990, Rui Wen Pan stands trial for the murder of Selina Shen. After 3 months of testimony and 3 days of deliberation, the result is returned. It's a hung jury. Pan returns to jail, awaiting a second trial. He has no trouble securing first-rate legal help.
His emotional state is not good. He's very upset.
Defense lawyer John Rosen is known as Mr. Murder.
If the defense puts on its best case and makes high demands, sets high standards for the prosecution to meet in order to get a conviction, then all of us are served, because the prosecution has to work harder to make sure that the right people are convicted and innocent people are not wrongly convicted. If defense took a lackadaisical view, didn't do the job they're supposed to do, then the system is weak, because the police get lazy, the crowns get lazy, the courts get lazy, innocent people go to jail, and we all ultimately suffer.
If Pan didn't kill Selina Shen, then who did? Rosen argues that it was Robert Fisher. He reveals Fisher's personal involvement with another Asian student.
Well, it turned out that there had been a student in one of my classes. She and I had very slight acquaintances, boyfriend, girlfriend, just very little. But apparently, she made any number of anonymous phone calls to the sexual harassment hotline at the university.
Rosen drags Fisher through the mud.
My job is to put other possibilities forward. My theory was this, that Miss Shen had an argument with Mr. Pan, or had decided to separate from him, that she voluntarily left the house, probably when he wasn't home, and that she needed a place to go, and the obvious place to go was to her newfound friend, Mr. Fisher. That was my theory. And that Mr. Fisher was the last to have seen her.
Well, the way he looked at it was, this guy has a history, as he would put it, of abusing women, of luring them with sex, and being obsessed with sex. And then I had seen Selina, and she was my next target. And I was going to lure her away from Mr. Pan, and then, I don't know what, do some horrible thing to her. And she was 18 years younger than me, so he made a big deal out of that. What is the difference in your ages? 18 years. And he'd look around significantly at the jury, and again, trying to make me out as being some dirty old man.
The tactic works. The jury is about to acquit Pan when a major legal complication results in a mistrial. Another year, another trial. This time, John Rosen says the prosecution got its story straight.
What happened at the third trial was that a brand new team had been brought in, a third team actually, by the Crown to prepare for the trial, leaving aside the legal issues that were the fallout from the second trial, and learn from the mistakes that had been made at the first two trials. And they did a very successful job.
And this afternoon, after another lengthy trial, the jury returned a verdict of guilty of first-degree murder.
Pan is sentenced to life in prison for the murder of Selina Shen. He will be eligible for parole in 2017, but says he will not apply. It would be an admission of his guilt, and Pan has always maintained he did not kill Selina Shen. Detective Larry Edgar is certain that he put Selina's murderer behind bars.
I think Mr. Pan's a very intelligent individual, and he just got caught up in his own belief that he could get away with this crime, that he had pulled the perfect crime.
Pan has appealed his case to the Supreme Court and been denied.